Hello everybody, John here, and today on To The Garage I'm going to change the gearing ratios on my Cyrusher Kommoda. Hi everyone. Those of you who are interested in the e-bike side of things will remember that recently I did a full review on my Cyrusher Kommoda, and in the negatives, of which there are few, I mentioned a couple of things, one of which I'd already addressed, which was the pedals which come with the bike, I think are quite poor. But the other one was about gear ratios. And what I was saying was that because the bike is capable of propelling itself along with your assistance at 15.5 miles an hour, even in restricted form, even when you're in the highest gear, which is the smallest cog on the back, you're not comfortable keeping up with the bicycle and adding any more effort. Essentially, you're spinning the cranks too quickly to put any significant extra effort in. So I said I'd like to change the cluster in order to fit a smaller high gear cog. I also said it would be nice if I could have a larger low gear cog, so that when you're setting off, particularly your tricky off-road situations, or maybe up a steep hill, and you've got to get the cranks to rotate quarter of a turn or maybe a third before the motor kicks in and makes assistance, it can be difficult to get to that point sometimes because the low gear is not quite low enough for really steep banks with this relatively heavy bike. So anyway, I set to finding the right cluster to do that, and whilst I was at it, the part of the search, I came across another YouTube channel which I want to give a big shout out to, and it's called Everything E-Bike. I'll put a link in the description below. And the reason I particularly want to give a shout out to them, not only has that guy done the same mod that I want to do, which reassures me that I'm doing the right thing, but also he recommended a particular cluster and I've got exactly the same one. So thank you very much, Everything E-Bike. I have followed your lead and have gone for a Drift Maniac 7-speed 11 to 34 tooth. So our original is a 14 tooth high gear. This one is 11, and our original low gear is a 28 and this is a 34. So a significant change in both directions. And this didn't come with. Here is the cluster, very pretty. I'm guessing it's nickel plated. You see that very small high gear, or number 7, and it looks like the low gear is completely out of place. You know, it's got this huge jump, but as you get out to the bigger rings, as you add more teeth, so you do get a bigger jump. So we've got an 11 tooth gear here. Just looking if we can see what gear 6 is. Looks like it says 13. The next one is a 15, then an 18, 21, 24, and then all the way up to 34 tooth. And it's been lightened and relieved. And this particular item from Drift Maniacs is rated for e-bikes. Now, something to address there. When they say, oh, you know, you need a stronger cluster, it's not the cluster that's stronger. It's actually the ratcheting mechanism, the pawl, as it's called, the bit that ticks. Some e-bikes will apply all their torque through that pawl, and if it's low quality or not intended for such torque, then you'll break it in no time. However, this is a hub drive bike, meaning here is the motor. So the power is here. And if you think about it, if this motor is driving harder and faster than you, the pedaler, then the cluster will effectively be coasting anyway. You're not putting any power in through this. The motor is the thing that's doing the damage, and that's able to get ahead of the freewheel. So if you've got a hub drive bike, you don't need an uprated pole for e-bike power. If you have a center drive bike, so the motor is up this end, then yes, it's applying all that torque and power through the chain, and then you do need the uprated pole in here, or you'll smash it to pieces in no time. No problem having upgraded poles in a bike that's not going to damage them, it's just bonus. But if you've got a hub drive bike, don't be fretting about that. First thing I'm going to do is put my bike on a stand. Some people think you can't use a traditional bike stand with these big heavy frames. You can, you just have to be slightly inventive and use the seat post, which works really well. Now the Cyrusher is a properly heavy bike. It's about 30 to 35 kilos, depending on if you've got a few accessories on and who you ask. So be careful when you're lifting this. It's not light. But all you need to do is use the seat post to clamp rather than the frame. Now we're going to be removing the rear wheel, obviously, so that we can get at and change this cluster. And to do that, all we need to do is slacken off the wheel nut on this side, the wheel nut on this side. The disc brakes don't need adjusting, should slip straight out. But because it's an e-bike, don't forget you have a power cable that will run into the motor. On mine it's on this side, and that's cable tied to the frame here and here. And you've got to cut the cable ties and go back far enough to find the electrical connector. Otherwise you're going to have the wheel hanging and it's going to be hanging off the cables. So think about the electrical cable before you drop the wheel. So just cut the cable tie there. And in front of the stand, there, another one there, and then finally, if you tug the cable, you will find tucked up in the frame the power connection. Separate the two metal rings, unscrew them and pull straight apart, and your rear wheel is now disconnected and ready for removal. The rear wheel nut is a 19mm. So slacken off on that side, slacken off on this side. If you've not played around with bicycles too much in the past, people are very often scared of the derailleur system. It looks complicated. It's actually very, very simple. All this clever bit down the bottom is doing is applying tension to the chain because of all the different size gears. It needs to be a different length for each one. And if you just play with it a little bit, you'll soon see that, oh yes, it's just a sprung-loaded gadget that is also capable of moving left and right to make the gear change. So to remove your wheel, just pull it back so that we're able to get the wheel and the cluster to drop down. Slacken off the wheel nuts a little bit more. And then I'm going to give the wheel a bit of a wriggle. And on the Cyrusher, the dropouts are straight down. There we go. Some bikes, this slot is a little bit more forward or backwards, so just have a look which way so you know which way to knock the wheel. And you can see the derailleur just moves around so that you can get the chain off. And we're out. You can see on this side of the wheel the power going in through the axle, so be careful not to damage this cable. But for our purposes, all we need is this side. I'm going to take off the wheel nut, which you don't have to completely remove in order to get the wheel out. Take off the washer. It's got a flatted inside and outside shape. Take off this shaped spacer, and this bit, the sticking out lug, is going to be facing down. This is how it engages in that dropout slot, so that bit is down and forward towards the front of the bike and down slightly. And on the outside, and then all we have to do is remove this cluster. Now your average toolbox contains most things that you need for working on bicycles, with a couple of exceptions. And this is one of those exceptions. You do need a specific tool to remove a rear cassette or rear cluster. And it's a socket with a very thin wall, 1/2 inch drive, although you can put a spanner on it. And it's got this spline shape on the outside. And if I get our new cluster, what you may be able to see is there's a spline shape inside. May see it easier from the back. And so when this goes in, it reaches in and grabs hold of those splines and can turn them. The thread you're trying to undo is actually here, it's quite large. So there can be a lot of force needed to remove these. So we slide that on. And because this shaft is quite long, you'll note it's coming through the square section. So I won't be able to use my ratchet on the square drive. Instead, I'll be using a 21mm ring spanner on there. And I've got to go anti-clockwise, and the wheel is going to want to roll away. So we'll see how we get on here. I might have to jam it against something in a moment. There we go. That one wasn't too bad. Again, if you've got a centre drive bike where the chain is powered, it will be constantly trying to tighten this up, and then you really will struggle to get them off, and you'll probably need a long bar and jam the wheel up against a wall. But if it's a hub drive bike like the Cyrusher Kommoda, shouldn't be too difficult, because you've been tightening it up using your leg power, not the motor power. And there we are. We've removed our cluster. And you can see all the sand and debris from my beach riding on there. Take the opportunity to give a little clean up. But it all looks good. I note there is a little metal spacer, which I'm going to leave on. And a new cluster Goes on like that. Now you've got to be very careful not to cross thread these. It should go on very easily. If it's not going on easily, stop. There we go. Lovely. Now tightening up, hand tie is more than tight enough, because again, you're going to tighten this every time you pedal. There we go. And we've upgraded the gearing on our bicycle. You may be interested to see these odd shapes around the edges of the gears. And if you look carefully, you can see evidence of similar sort of shapes, less extreme, on all the different gears. Typically, the smaller the gear, the less shaping there is. That is to help the chain to climb, particularly this big jump, from here to here, because it kind of grips hold of the side of the chain a little bit and helps it to lift over. So it's a good thing when you see these shapes on the side. This one is Drift Maniac. The original equipment is Shimano. And if we look, hopefully you can see on here, you will also see the same sorts of shaping to help the chain to move from one sprocket to the next. So now we reverse our order, putting the spacer back on with the lug at the bottom. You may have rotated the wheel whilst you've been doing the cluster, as I have. So good job I checked that this is facing down. And then when you put the spacer on, you're not the opposite way up. Then our washer with the flats, then our nut, and the washer with the flats is going to go outside the frame, and so is the nut. So we're kind of going to assemble like that. And on the other side, you can see the same sort of arrangement. And this, as we said, this cable wants to be facing down or forwards towards the front of the bike, not backwards towards the back of the bike, because it's obviously got to travel towards the crankset. Place the wheel in approximately the right position. We need to get the loose portion of the chain that comes from the front sprocket slack, so that it's under the axle, and the other part of the chain over the axle. Now when you're lifting the wheel, you might get to a point where you think, oh, it's not going in. Check your disc brake. It's on the opposite side to where you're looking at the moment, guys, but you just got to make sure that the disc slides between the pads as you're lifting it, else you'll never be able to lift the wheel up fully into position. It is a bit of a wrestling match. And of course, you could remove the caliper and then refit it, but I don't want to. That is the main challenge, I think, is just getting the disc to go back into the caliper whilst you're aligning everything else. And yeah, not helped by a heavy wheel. Working on the bike with the bike upside down may be an easier way of doing it in this particular circumstance. maybe next time I will try that. After a bit more wrestling, I've surrendered, and I'm just going to loosen the caliper from its mounts. They're 5mm hex or H5s. There we go. So let's see if this is a lot easier without the brake caliper there. So it certainly can't be any worse. It's just a case of too many things to line up, plus the weight. Well, there was no pretending that was easy. It's all just down to the weight of the wheel. And if I was doing that again, I would definitely be turning the bike upside down for refit, so that gravity could help me out a little bit. It's back in but not tightened up. So all I'm going to do now is just I've got the blocks under the tyre, just apply some weight so that I know that I'm fully home in the slots, and then tighten the wheel nuts up. So far it's a really easy job, except refitting the wheel, which is not actually that connected to this specific job anyway. It's just any time you've got to refit this wheel. Yeah, definitely turn the bike upside down. If you do take your calipers off, just remember there are washers that go between the caliper and its bracket. So on this surface, behind this surface. So I'm putting a bolt in the hole, then putting a washer. Oh, apologies, the camera battery packed up just as I was finishing that last shot, so I'm not quite sure what bits you saw and missed, but you didn't miss much. But we got the wheel back in place. Now just cable tying the power lead back into position. And make sure I gather up the brake light and brake line cables there as well. And then reconnect. There's arrows on the connector. Just got to locate them. There's one, that side, and line them up with the arrows on the other item, so that when you push it together, it connects nice and easy. And screw the two metal ferrules together, and then post the connector back into the frame like so. And when you've got it all nicely tucked up, we just cable tie those into place. I think you can tell a lot about bicycle manufacturers by just looking at cable management, how they route the brake cables and wires on their bikes. Are they neat? Are they protected? Have they put clips and brackets in place to attach them to? Some make no effort whatsoever. Some, like the Cyrusher, have really well thought out positions for all the clips and good cable routing. Okay, so back over on this side, because we've just remounted the chain, what you're probably going to find is as soon as you start to turn the pedals, something's going to jump. That's to be expected. So just give it a rotation and let things settle into the appropriate locations. So it's hunting around a little between two gears there. Yes, just hunting. So I'm going to go for the gears. Jump up a gear. Okay. And in first gear, we've gone beyond the sprocket. This direction is the cable being too tight. So I'm just going to use this adjuster here and turn it clockwise one turn. Let's see if that's altered things. No, I can see it's still going to try and climb off. 2 turns clockwise. All right, now it's still clicking. Yeah, it's still trying to get a little bit too far. So half a turn. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's try going up the gears. So that's first. One click should give me second, and it does. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. And there we go. So with a little bit of fettling and adjustment, you can make that cluster work really, really well. Just got to play around a little bit, but essentially this one tightens or loosens the cable, so you pull harder. If you tighten this screw, it limits how far the chain can come this way. My instinct is that this jockey wheel here is now quite close to the cluster, so it's as big as you would want to go. You might improve chain alignment by having a fractionally smaller jockey wheel here, and I might look into that. Unscrew that wheel, let's have a look at what size it is. And having removed this, we can see that it is Shimano brand, which is good. You know, Shimano make a range of kit from inexpensive to very expensive, but Shimano don't make any rubbish, you would say. However, this does not have any bearings. So there's a little sleeve that fits in that hole, and then these washers, which are cupped, cover that up and sit in a recess so that the dirt doesn't get in. So there's no actual bearings in these, so they'd stand an upgrade, that's for sure. What I'll do is I'll just count the teeth. Right, if I start at the beginning of the word Shimano, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it's a 13 tooth gear. And I'll give you a review of how I get on actually riding this as soon as I get the chance. Howling with rain at the moment, blowing a gale. So remember to subscribe, click the bell notification icon and drop us a comment. See what you think of this mod. I'll be really interested to know. And remember to check out everything e-bike. I'll see you all soon. If you just go to Amazon/shop/to the garage, and I'll put that link in the description below so that you can just click on it. It takes you to the garage area of Amazon that is categorized into hand tools, power tools, gadgets and gizmos, things specifically the XK8, etc. that I've bought from Amazon over the years so that you can follow the same links and have a look, see how much those cost at the moment. Nice little feature. Thank you, Amazon. If you're enjoying our channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notifications of new videos. And please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, and you can share the videos. And below the video is always the area where you can comment and get involved with the chat.